Thank you for joining us. This is the second in our Rethinking series of webinars. This time, as you obviously can see, we're here to talk creativity, the importance of creative playtime for brands. And I'm quite excited about this, Tom, because I think when we talked about this, we're talking innovation, we're talking creativity, we're talking play, and we're talking impact, aren't we? Which are four of our favourite things. So hopefully to you as the audience as well, it'll be an interesting topic. And hope to get lots of value out of this next sort of 30 to 40 minutes. I think we've got plans. So yeah, thanks for joining, and hopefully you'll find this useful. So before we go on, I'm not going to dwell on this. You are here watching us. You know who Quantum are. We don't need to talk about this, obviously. So we'll skip this slide and we'll move straight in. I'm James. I'm head up the new business here at Quantum, and Tom here is our creative innovation lead. He will be doing most of the talking here in the next sort of few minutes, but and I will kind of hand over to him to talk in a bit more detail. But so today's agenda, really, we're going to cover off what do we mean by creative innovation, aren't we, Tom?
Yeah. So we're going to start out by kind of talking through what we mean by creative innovation, unpack that a little bit, and then we're going to kind of head straight into kind of where this journey began that we've been on, and then kind of progress through looking at some of the workflows that we've explored, where we're going, and then kind of the learnings and takeaways from that. And then, as James said, we'll wrap up with a Q&A.
Excellent stuff. So yeah, well, Tom, over to you.
Okay, hi guys, my name's Tom Parrish. I'm the creative innovation lead here at Quantum. I've worked for Quantum for about 4 years, and I have been in the kind of creative industry for about 15 years now. I am kind of a very much a generalist. That's my jam. I love exploring workflows and learning new stuff, kind of pushing the boundaries of what we can achieve creatively. And that's kind of what the creative innovation, the innovation bit of my kind of role entails. So, as well as kind of being responsible for helping to kind of guide the creative output of the studio, I'm very much responsible for finding all the new toys and kind of workflows that we can implement as a team to kind of help drive that kind of creative output forward. So just to start out, I wanted to kind of set the tone here for like what our kind of ongoing mission as a creative team is, and that is to execute great ideas and deliver inspiring creative for our clients. So that kind of really is our kind of guiding star in what we do. But first, I just want to get this out of the way. I just wanted to share a kind of controversial opinion that Star Trek is, in fact, better than Star Wars. Everybody is entitled to their opinion. I will not be taking questions on this, but if anyone would like to reach out to me on LinkedIn to discuss this further, I'm more than happy to embrace the conversation.
I think you just opened the floodgates.
Okay, so moving on, like what do we mean when we say when we talk about creative innovation? Okay, so I was at a conference a week ago, and a quote was thrown up on a slide that kind of stuck and resonated. And this was from the late great Steve Jobs, and he said that innovation is creativity that ships. And I thought, wow, that's pretty sharp. That's pretty pithy. That kind of is nail on the head. And I started to unpack this a little bit and try and figure out what this means. What does it really mean? And I actually have a kind of change to this. I'd like to unpack it a little bit, and I will change that to innovation is creativity that adds value. And further to that, innovation that doesn't add value is just novelty. So, we have kind of a myriad of kind of new emerging technologies we've seen in the last kind of few years. I mean, particularly in the last kind of like 12 months, like things like the metaverse. And they don't feel like they're adding any value yet. So to me, that's novelty. I'm again happy to have a conversation about that, but so that's what I mean by this. So when we look to innovate in a process, we are talking about how can we add value to our creative output and to our process. So to me, this comes down to time. So when we look at the way a creative job is approached, at the moment in the way that we work, I think this is applicable to most kind of creative situations. We talk about kind of about 30% of that job is like the blue sky time, right? That's the ideation, that's the coming up with the ideas, that's pushing the envelope. And then, you pivot, and the rest of the budgeted time on a job, regardless of the kind of scale of it, because it tends to scale based on the size of the job, is 70% execution. This comes down then to kind of building out the pitch decks. This is our mood boarding. This is our recce's. This is our visualization. This is execution. So at the moment, this is what, how I think kind of like an average job looks. And what we're aiming to do in the process of kind of implementing and exploring new workflows and technologies is to swap that around. What we want to do is expand upon that time that we have at the front end of a job to really kind of take it to town, to explore it and kind of find that kind of playtime in those, in that ideation phase of a job, by reducing the amount of work that we have to do when executing. And we can find those kind of efficiencies in our process by exploring our processes and adopting new technologies and workflows. Because just to add to that, like time is the devil, right? That's what we're fighting against. Whether it's a deadline, there always need to be deadlines to jobs, and sometimes it is, that's the time you've got. So rather than kind of pushing back and asking for more time or whatever, like, 'cause that's not necessarily a thing that we can do. It's the marketing industry. That's the way we work. So we find that time. So we look at our process and in this, look to see where we can find that space to grow that playtime.
So we're not talking about going to our class and saying, can we have more time? It's literally, we know how much time we've got, how can we best utilize it?
Absolutely. This is about finding those efficiencies. So where did the story begin? So once upon a time, when I joined Quantum, we produced these kind of, as you can see in the background here, these kind of beautiful 2D visuals. These were produced in Photoshop, and they do a wonderful job of communicating clearly the creative idea, the intention. They answer the brief, and very beautifully done. But when we kind of looked into how they were done, how they were made, this could be up to 2 days worth of work to produce a single visual. And this is a massive, Photoshop document. And I kind of, when we started talking about this as a team, we thought, well, these are great. They're beautiful. They answer the brief, but these are single execution assets. These answer a question from one angle. They are labor intensive, and they don't necessarily kind of consider some of the production questions that often come in earlier in that process when you are trying to work expediently. So, when we're kind of working through these kind of experiential gigs, often we are kind of having to kind of coordinate with production partners early doors, and being able to answer questions early, about spatial requirements, is important. And when we work with a 2D visual, this is ace, right up until somebody says, cool, what's it look like from the side? What's it look like at night? What if we didn't have the tent? What if we had this, that, or the other? So, looking to try and find those places to be more iterative and more dynamic in the way that we work, brings in that flexibility, which, helps us solve the problems more efficiently. So, until one day, our 3D workflow enters stage left as our protagonist. So I had a limited background in 3D when I joined, and as a team, we very much kind of decided that this was the way that we could kind of incrementally improve our workflow to find that space. So we do a lot of experiential and physical kind of spatial design. So moving into a place where we would bring kind of 3D design into that as part of that workflow, kind of even right from the very start, even when we're kind of ideating, seemed like a really kind of sensible ploy or gambit. But we started out small because, above all else, we wanted to maintain the integrity of the creative output that we were making. So we were learning, but we were looking for the space in those and working just on internal projects as well to find that growth space in jobs. So, we were still very much kind of working on our kind of strong ideas, well executed, but we were also looking for those growth points. Where could we add this value? And over time, we actually found that, kind of switching to working kind of three-dimensionally, thinking more spatially, started to lead to kind of more interesting ideas, and would allow us to answer questions early on. And the more that we solved early, the easier, that kind of later 70% suddenly became 50%, because we've answered questions at the front end that allow us to then focus on pushing the details and pushing the fun. Yeah. So here's a little bit about, or here's just a few clips of some of the CG stuff that we have worked on over the past couple of years. So this was the Piazza Aperol piece, and then that was a bar we did for Copperberg, for the Copperberg Awards. That was Box Park for Soundcore. And I think that was Taste of London for Asphalt.
So, and some of these we're about to come on to now, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I think we just have a little bit of a show and tell here about kind of some of the ways that we've implemented, like not just kind of the CGs here, but some of the developments that we've kind of learned along the way that have helped speed that process up. So this was for Covent Garden. This was a really fun project to work on, and came with kind of a lot of constraints around what we could do in the space. So we actually ended up using Google Earth data to help us kind of plan out the space here, and figure out kind of where sight lines were going to be, where light would be hitting the space, and on top of using site plans. And then this gave us a kind of millimeter accurate kind of plans to be able to then take to take to Covent Garden to kind of show them what we were going to be doing. But more importantly, when we were working with the client here as well, this meant that we could sit there and move pieces around. Like once we had kind of got to a place where we knew what we were aiming to deliver, that we could then kind of start iterating. And previously where we may have been doing kind of like the 2D work or even kind of sketches, it allowed us to be more flexible again in the way that we deployed that content.
Yeah. And so just one point,
Yeah.
obviously some people on the call may be kind of quite into their sort of tech and things like that. Some people may not. CG.
Okay, yeah. So computer generated. So when we talk
just
about
to be on the
when we talk about CGI in films, that's your computer generated imagery. So that's images that have been completely generated by a computer that don't have any live action kind of component to them. So I just wanted to kind of put in here as well, like this kind of shout out to my colleague Reese here. These were his renders, and this is where we've got to with kind of the level of the output over the last few years. We've kind of pushed towards photorealism, so we can take our concept work and kind of put it into these environments quite quickly, and kind of give a good idea of what that kind of that deployed kind of concept, what that deployed activation is going to look like. So I just was going to show here that we had the Soundcore bar in the Soundcore piece in the reel earlier, and I'm now going to just skip on. There we go. And that's kind of how that turned out. So it allows us to get kind of really close to the level of output, and again keep that flexibility right up to deliver, right up to kind of sign off and commitment point. So that we can iterate, so that we can kind of keep pushing those ideas. Suddenly we can start swapping out panels on the side. We can start experimenting with kind of light animation down the side, because we've got that play space.
It's basically you're mimicking the real life environment.
Yeah, yeah,
on a
absolutely.
computer.
And again, you know, we kind of were able to kind of walk around this space and get a feel for what it was going to be like. So yeah, and you know, here's another example.
Okay, so which one's the real one then?
So this was quite a fun exercise in that we only had kind of plate photography to start with. So we had an image kind of provided by the client as to the site recce, which was on the left. So we then kind of took that into CG, and again, rather than, you know, we could have sat and sketched this out, we could have gone in and photoshopped in all the bits that we needed, but again, kind of extracting the perspective data from this, so kind of taking it into 3D, figuring out the space, using some of the dimensions we've been given, we could rebuild this and then composite it over the photo, which meant that we can get a feel for what this is actually going to look like. So again, we're kind of minimizing that kind of interpretation in the last 10% of the project, and it allowed us to deliver content on the right there that, you know, deliver the installation on the right there that looked, you know, pretty dang close.
And again, whilst we're on a sort of topic of time, again, much quicker, right, to do it this way than doing it the old way.
Yeah, I mean, you know, so there is an element of kind of learning skills, right? So, you know, we were able to do this relatively quickly because we've learned over time, but once that skill set was in place and developed, you know, it's that kind of yes and mentality. Like, how can we push this? How could we move further with it? And you know, this kind of was a massive time saver in the way that we worked, and it meant that we could focus on, well, you know, what is that installation going to look like? What if we put kind of 3 drapes or 4 drapes in the window? What if we backlit them? You know, rather than being kind of too focused on, oh my goodness, I have got to get this Photoshop done on time. You know, and one of the things that came out of COVID was, you know, the lack of, or the inability to do photo shoots. So we kind of moved into adding kind of virtual photography to our workflow. So this was doing kind of highly accurate kind of computer renders of products, and this, you know, has been a massive kind of addition to our workflow, because it means that, you know, when we need to generate assets for a job, we're not having to kind of hunt through you know, a DAM, or try and find the right angle, or try and composite something. Like, we can just drop products in there, and, you know, we can relight them as much, you know, as and when we need, and, you know, we can iterate. So, you know, if we're doing kind of unpacks or stuff like that, you know, we have that content there to be able to present. And not only that, it is, again, kind of pushing for that realism while saving time in the process. So the question then, so what were we trying to answer in doing this? And, you know, we were trying to deliver more exciting concepts quicker, with greater flexibility and iteration, while integrating our pre-production considerations. So again, this is coming back to our 30-70. So we're trying to push more of that kind of scale towards the 30 and make that a 50, make it a 60, you know, and allow kind of space for our kind of creative team to really push the boat out and kind of focus on their creative process. So then what? Okay, so we're producing these CGs, and you know, like I say, they have formed a pretty consistent component of our creative process now. We still, you know, have our kind of front end phases with exploration and sketching, and then, you know, we kind of move into CG, and we will kind of push that through to a finished product. And 3D is great, but it comes with, it comes with a few constraints, such as render time. Man, watching a progress bar when you are on deadline can be painful. And who would have thought, you know, trying to calculate the trajectory of millions of photons interacting with physically realistic materials in a computer environment, you know, might take a while to calculate. So, you know, this is one of the constraints that we have when working in CG. So yes, we've got to a point where we have sped that kind of production process up, but there is that little bottleneck at the end. So what? Well, what we would really kind of now strive for, what we are striving for, is real-time immersive visualization, which sounds really fun.
It does.
I think it sounds fun.
It does.
So what do I mean by that? Well, this is a visual that we produce. This is a real-time CG produced in Unreal for our friends at Illy for their Taste of London stand. So this was a proof of concept that we did in-house to test the technology, and this is rendering in a fraction of the time of working in a full CG engine. So you know, this really does kind of allow us to work iteratively, and it's robust, it's stable. So you know, one of the things that we can do with this now is we can literally sit in a meeting and you know, be driving the render engine, you know, be driving Unreal to driving it on to you know, to iterate. So this is what the kind of finished bar turned out as. So we kind of worked in our CG software to develop and design and create kind of the structural elements of the bar, and then we took that into Unreal to explore it and to be able to create that environment that we could walk around. So you know, I put in the video there you know, the kind of the fly through. You know, we just put a little camera path through it. Took you know, a few minutes to kind of rig and render.
Just again, for those of people that may not so familiar with Unreal, give a very brief description of what it is.
Okay, Unreal is a real-time game engine that is developed by Epic Games.
Fortnite. Right.
The Fortnite guys, yeah. So so this is software that they have made available for people to use kind of to develop video games, but it's also seeing a widespread adoption in countless other industries, most, you know, notably in the film industry and in virtual production there. So you know, I know I said about Star Trek earlier, but you know, The Mandalorian, you know, was the first really to kind of, as far as I'm aware, first to pioneer doing virtual production on an LED stage using Unreal to drive real-time visuals in camera. And you know, that's one of the things that we kind of look for. I mean, I certainly, you know, I'm incredibly passionate just about technology and about kind of creative workflows. So you know, I love learning about like what the film industry is doing, what are VFX doing, what's going on in games, like, and looking for kind of parallels, because I think there's so much overlap in different workflows as to, and different industries as to where we can, you know, kind of learn from each other. You know, I mean, heck, you know, in you know, kind of previous jobs, like in previous life, like, I learned so much from drawing comic books that now applies to the way that I storyboard, or I will kind of storytell in a marketing kind of in a marketing way. So I know we said there were going to be some demos on this. So I recorded a little bit yesterday because I thought, you know, gosh, trying to do this live and talk at the same time would be quite entertaining. So I just did a little kind of screen capture here of kind of working through in Unreal yesterday. So I loaded up a model. This is driving kind of you know, directly in viewport on my laptop. And you know, we could be sat in a client meeting with this. You know, we can grab the props. We can start moving these about. You know, is that, you know, is the plant pot going to look better over here? Is it going to look better there? Can I swap that out? Can we maybe try whether that's going to be a different pot there? And you know, we've got these animated characters in that, you know, just add that kind of level of immersion to the scene and that realism. And the great thing about this as well, you know, we can sit and start to kind of iterate on, you know, materials. Well, right, well, what if we made the deck white? You know, what's that going to look like? Once upon a time, you know, we go back to our 2D visuals, that goes, you know, back into studio, and that's going to be another couple hours to kind of turn that round and then send that back. And like, how cool is this that we could be in a meeting with the client and just, you know, work through that there and then in real time?
Yeah.
Like, you know, and the great thing with this as well, you know, we can see, all right, well, what's it going to look like at night? you know, what's it going to look like in the rain? We can explore that. You know, we can work through those, and in doing so, like, that prompts more questions. Like, oh crikey, yeah, it's going to rain. Like, have we thought about like the rain cover for this? You know, are the electrics going to be safe? You know, all those kind of things that, you know, it just kind of brings that into the process, and you end up then solving those early doors, which again makes that kind of back end of the process so much smoother and so much more efficient.
And again, you know, really delving on the finer details as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Rain being important as well, thing is it pretty much rains all the time.
Yeah, because we're taking away that pain point of production, or that pain point of execution. Oh, yeah, I'm a sucker for, yeah, I'm a sucker for depth of field shots. But by taking away that kind of you know, or reducing that pressure of execution, means that, like you say, we have that time to focus on the details and to really kind of keep that time focused on like how we're going to or, you know, how and what we're going to explore. So yeah. So I said real-time visualization there, yeah. And you know, one of the great things as well that you can do with Unreal is you know, this pairs with an Oculus. This pairs with an Oculus Quest headset, a VR headset. So you know, we can walk around that space. You know, we can move around it in the same way as you would in a video game environment. You know, that's incredibly powerful. But what about, you know, I said we still have to design in our 3D software, right? So what if? So then, yeah, kind of what if being my two most powerful creative, my creative phrase. So what about designing in VR? So this is a kind of super quick demo I did yesterday. I've sped it up by about 150%, but I think this came in at about kind of 3 minutes or something in kind of design time. So Gravity Sketch is a virtual reality sketching and sculpting software. And I originally learned about this program on a course, I mentioned The Mandalorian again. It was an absolutely incredible concept artist called Jama Jurabev, gave a talk about how they used Gravity Sketch in kind of pre-production on The Mandalorian. So he would be in virtual reality here, sketching away with Jon Favreau wearing another headset, and they would design kind of the first draft of a stage of a set, and they would be walking around and penciling in with a remote where the camera was going to go. So I thought, well, that's awesome. Can you imagine if we could design experiential spaces like that? So
this is you doing it now.
Yeah, so we do. So this is kind of a super kind of quick example of like just sketching an FSDU. So instead of starting on paper and using a Sharpie, or like doing a bunch of thumbnails like that, this, you know, I can go in, I can walk around the space, I can get a kind of tactile feel, a physical kind of feel for the way that this is going to look. I can import objects there. So I've just brought in a kind of a spirit bottle to populate it, and I can take this out and texture it, or I can, you know, recolor it in space, because essentially this is our sketch, right? This is just the, you know, the thumbnail that we then kind of iterate beyond on. But you know, I can design a whole space with this. In fact, you know, we did do you know, a kind of bar environment with this, and you know, kind of just blocking out a bar and then going around with a red pen and drawing on the walls as to where stuff's going to be. Like, again, kind of thinking it's kind of taking it back to that kind of playtime moment of and making it fun, finding new ways to kind of engage with that question, like how, you know, and find innovative ways to solve it. So I love Gravity Sketch. I think it is wicked. So what? That's the question, right?
Always the question.
So the applicable lessons here that I think are the kind of key takeaways. As I think I've kind of said throughout here, like the focus for me is on finding time to explore, finding time to play in these jobs. And to do that, you know, we want to open up that time in our budget by making that end process simpler. So we give ourselves more time at the front end to fail. right? It's kind of that nobody likes to fail, but failure is part and parcel of being creative, right? If you haven't failed, you haven't tried hard enough, because you haven't pushed it. You haven't taken those ideas and pushed them until they broke. Pixar kind of famously say, fail early and fail often. And if you do that all in that front end by giving yourself time to do so, I mean, heck, like, it completely changes the tempo of a creative job if you suddenly, because you've managed to kind of reorganize your workflow, say, actually, do you know what? I've got 12 hours to work on kind of coming up with all these ideas, as opposed to, I can only do 6. And that kind of changes the entire outlook and allows you to kind of loop more people in.
I mean, you could even rephrase that as failure is growth, couldn't you?
Absolutely, yeah. Failure is awesome, because it's how we learn. If we got everything right all the time immediately, it would be really boring. So I've got here as well, figure out the real goal. Okay, so I talked about at the front end our kind of 5-year mission. Our intent there of the delivering great creative and inspiring creative. And so in this process, when we've been looking at our workflow and looking at where we could make those economies, we've always had that kind of at the back of our mind, or in our minds, as to, like, that's the intention. So does this feedback, does this serve that goal? Is this going to help us? And you know what, there have been sometimes when you kind of are exploring a kind of new tech avenue, or you're kind of playing with something, and it's like, no, this is fun, but this isn't going to help. But you'll be surprised at how many times there is crossover down the line. Something that came up in a really left field thing working in After Effects, and then kind of like 12 months later, it's like, oh, actually no, that's super similar to that. And then you're kind of borrowing from these different workflows and kind of compositing, putting it together. And then, by creating that time, creating that space in your creative process, it allows you to embrace that kind of yes and mentality. Because that kind of pressure is eased, it allows you to be playful with it, and to kind of yes and what if, and to push that idea until it breaks. You push it until it breaks, and then you take it back 10%, because when you are working, when you're under pressure, the tendency is default to a safe option, right? You answer the brief, and it's like, yep, okay, cool. But if you've then got that space, then okay, right, I've parked my safe option, right?
Let's get to work.
Now let's have fun with it. So we change the way we work based on the evolving needs of our clients and our intention to keep improving our creative product. So we looked to adopt new tools and workflows to create space in projects, to create greater playtime and space for iteration, ultimately leading to more inspiring creative delivered.
Another quote there from the
I'm sneaking them in. So yeah, not to hark back to Star Trek, but our continuing mission is to execute great ideas and keep delivering inspiring creative for our clients. Ad infinitum et ultra,
which translates as
to infinity and beyond.
There you go. Good stuff.
Thank you.
Great stuff, Tom. Well, hopefully we'll have some questions. I think at the end of the presentation. Okay, right, any questions coming through? But I'm not, before we sort of answer from the audience out there, I wanted to go back to actually to one of the sort of points you made earlier about the kind of innovation and novelty kind of aspect of some innovation. And obviously you've managed to speak for almost 40 minutes and you haven't mentioned anything to do with generative AI or anything like that.
Yes.
So I guess my question is, and I'm sure people joining us is probably expected in some capacity. We'll talk about that.
Sure.
But what, generative AI,
okay.
Novelty or actually useful, or is it too early to tell?
Okay, that is it's a big question. I went to a conference last week that was amazing, mind-blowing, eye-opening, slightly terrifying, or all in one kind of bundle. And it was a really, really insightful kind of 2 days on discussing kind of generative AI for the creative industry, and kind of seeing the effects that it's going to have on well, everything. It is going to touch a part of everything we do. Honestly, I feel like I could do a whole kind of another. We could do this again on AI, but broadly speaking, like, this is going to be it is going to touch the way that we work. It is going to change the way we work. It is up to us as creatives to really kind of dictate that tempo and choose the way that we embrace that. So you will get folks who go kind of both barrels and embrace AI and technology kind of wholesale, and then there will be ways that, well, we actually already use AI because we use generative fills in Photoshop, we use the Magic Wand tool, which is a form of machine learning. I'm not a data scientist, but it is going to become more and more present in the way that we work, and it's up to us to pick how we make that part of our process. But I think we can really frame it with a positive mindset, in that when we look at it being a way to automate the mundane, or to remove, much in the same way as we've been talking, or I was saying in this talk about looking for those ways to make that workflow more efficient. There will be ways for AI to make the job, to make the creative process smoother and easier. Now, that said, there are concerns about, like, what it's going to mean for creative jobs and jobs in the sector in general. And the one kind of thing I would bear in mind with this is that it can help you generate stuff. It can help you, iterate and create content. But this is incredibly philosophical for a Thursday afternoon. But an AI can't tell you what's art. It can't tell you whether that concept works or not. It can construct something based on some cues you've given it. And you can look at it and tell it whether it's good or whether it needs to change it. But that spark, that idea, that concept that's leading the overall kind of idea, that's you. Like, you could put a prompt into ChatGPT and ask it to generate something similar to that, but there's no kind of human touch point to that that's going to resonate. Like, it's synthetic. Does that?
Yeah, I think so, definitely. And I guess building on from that, one of the questions we've had from the audience is, I guess, loosely similar. So, as the advertising industry continues to evolve, what emerging technologies or platforms do you believe will have the most significant impact on creativity in advertising, or more broadly? And I'm presuming this person is a student, and how should students prepare for these changes? So how for people entering the industry, prepare for these sort of changes, do you think, in your opinion?
Man, it's an interesting one, because in one regard, there has never been a more it's never been a more exciting time to be to be getting into the creative industry. So when we look back to 15, 20 years ago, when you start out, like, you would come in as a graphic designer, or you would be an art worker, and you'd typeset, and you were a specialist. And then we've broadly become kind of more and more generalist over time. And I honestly think that that's going to be the way forward. And I think also that keeps it interesting. Like, I mean, for me, it's about kind of the fun I derive from solving problems. So, my advice, I think, would be keep a broad lens. Keep that view wide, and absorb and look for the things that really resonate with you, that you can take on board and use in your work. In terms of kind of the way that technology is going to evolve, I mean, we were waiting for this kind of paradigm shift to happen with the metaverse, and Apple deploying their Reality Pro. It kind of arrived with a and a massive price tag attached to it. So it hasn't kind of jump started this AR XR MR kind of wave that we've, kind of knows in the wings. But for me, that is very much like Web 2.0 was back in the noughties. Everyone was like, Web 2's here, get yourselves ready. And then it actually kind of took about 4 or 5 years for that to become a thing.
Cool. And I guess just on that, to build on that as well, so you mentioned you've got a lot of influence yourself outside of the kind of creative in terms of other sort of passions and things,
Yeah.
so like gaming, for example. I mean, I guess would that be something that you would suggest to people that are looking to kind of broaden their skill set and horizons on this?
Heck, I mean, yeah. So, yeah. I mean, that's to me, that's a broader kind of thing about creativity in general. Like, you've got to kind of fill the well. Like, creativity is a resource that we use, and the more you use it, the more you can generate. But also, like, that is driven and that's influenced by everything that you kind of see and touch around you. So and everything you interact with. So yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Like when you go and play games or something, or you will go and see a film or like watch a show, and there will be that kind of, it'll sit just in the back of your head, and then when you start kind of working on a project, you'll get the dots connect and be like, oh yeah, that was really cool, what if, and again asking that wonderful question, and then you kind of experiment with that.
And then another question that's come in, I guess this is more around some challenges, and obviously we've talked about all of the great stuff we can do, but obviously there are challenges that you be faced with in doing this. I mean, is there any sort of insights, or can you give some sort of insight into some of the challenges you've encountered delivering these sort of programs, and I guess how you've overcome them ultimately?
Yeah.
Loaded question.
Yeah, no, so that's so there's a phrase again that was used on a Pixar workshop that I went to, and they said every project is an ugly baby at some point. And they referred to their stories like that, and I think it's pretty harsh, but they were like, look, every project goes through an ugly duckling phase, and particularly when you are kind of pushing outside of that comfort zone on kind of creativity and ideation, you will kind of get to that point where it's like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? This is wild. And it's at that point you've got to trust your process, like trust your experience, and keep iterating. Like you have those tools to solve the problem. Sometimes it's not apparent what you're trying to solve yet, so you just keep pushing. You just break that task down with the various different kind of like metrics you've got in your head as to what the win criteria of that job are, and you pick it apart, and it's like, right, well, does it fit this? Does it match that? Does it match that? And then somewhere along that process you'll figure out like where that pain point, why it's not clicking, and then you can kind of solve that.
Cool. Good stuff. Someone's asked about providing a list of sort of some of the programs and the software we've used.
Yes. Okay. Like,
is that something we can talk about very quickly? I'm conscious of the time.
Okay. Yeah.
Or is it something you want to kind of very quickly?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm a massive advocate of Blender. I love Blender. I think it is a fantastic software. I originally worked in 3ds Max, but Blender is an open source software. So it is free for people to be able to pick up and learn, and I think that makes CG super accessible, and YouTube again is a great place to learn in terms of picking up resources for that kind of stuff. Unreal is made by Epic. Gravity Sketch, as I say, is I don't think it's Google, but it's like a pretty cheap program to pick up on the Oculus platform, and I am a massive advocate of Procreate on the iPad as well for illustration purposes.
Cool.
And also, if anybody would like to kind of nerd harder on software or workflows and stuff, please just drop me a message on LinkedIn, and I will be happy to answer questions.
I was going to say that was my next question. Obviously, would you be willing to take any questions from anybody on that? I think as you can see, you're very passionate about this subject, aren't you? So I think no problem there. So, but I think just from a time perspective, if anyone has any other questions, obviously, as we said before, do get in touch with us. Our details are there. Obviously, you can connect with Tom directly on LinkedIn, myself as well, if you wish. I think before we go, we've got one more quick poll that we'd love you to do, which should appear in a minute.
Dun, dun, dun.
dun, 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 which is, has Tom inspired you to have some more fun in your creative process? Yes, no, or I need more information. So if you could fill out that, then we can give Tom his feedback about how well he's done today. But hopefully you have been inspired by what is a fascinating and ever-changing
Oh man, like yeah,
world.
it's if you told me 15 years ago what my day would look like now versus then, I don't know whether I would have believed you.
No, it's who knows where it's going to go, right?
Ad infinitum.
Yeah. Next time we'll be speaking to the Tom bot.
Oh.
Great. Well, no, thank you all for joining. I hope you've had an enjoyable 50 minutes or so with us. As I say, do get in touch if you want to hear more. Talk to us about the work we do, work Tom does. Yeah. But other than that, have a great afternoon, and hopefully it's sun where you are and not rain. Thank you.
Thanks so much.